I'm Jens Odegaard, and welcome to Season 6 of Engineering Out Loud. This season, we're excited to feature student research and projects from fresh-faced undergrads up through the grizzled ranks of the doctoral level. What these students are doing in school is already impacting our day-to-day lives through things like software solutions for helping those living with mental illness take control of their health, to impacting the generation and storage of renewable energy. Or like today's story, using computer code to help keep workers exposed to radiation safe. From the College of Engineering at Oregon State University, this is Engineering Out Loud. If you can, think back to the end of your sophomore year, that transitional period where everyone's finishing off the standard core classes that we all take in common and starting to split off into the more specific upper-level undergraduate tracks. It's also probably the time that you started getting serious and looking for internships. It's in this transitional period that we meet Logan Onspach, pursuing his degree in radiation health physics.
It's at this point where I don't really have a ton of experience in the field. I haven't taken a ton of classes, but I really want to try to get an internship. And it's going to be pretty difficult to get an internship. So I thought, well, why don't I just email Dr. Hamby and just say, hey, is there anything going on at the Rad Center that I can help with? And he said, why don't you just come down to my office and let's talk. And then he basically offered me a summer job that became this project.
Dr. Hamby is radiation health physics professor David Hamby in the College of Engineering. The Rad Center is the Oregon State Radiation Center here on campus, which houses a variety of radiation and nuclear-related labs and facilities. The project Logan mentioned? No big deal. Just lead authorship as an undergrad on a peer-reviewed research paper published in one of the premier journals. Basically the undergraduate academic equivalent of hitting a game-winning Grand Slam in the College World Series. But first, let's take a step back. What is radiation health physics? Here's Catherine Higley. She's head of the College of Engineering School of Nuclear Science and Engineering. She's also one of the world's top health physicists. I caught up with her for an impromptu interview in her office, so excuse the audio quality.
So health physics is really the art and science of radiation protection. And so you use your knowledge of radiation detection, radiation safety, limitations to help manage programs, to help oversee maybe technicians that are doing decontamination or doing remediation of facilities and things like that.
A common oversight role for health physicists would be checking up on equipment that we're all familiar with.
My dad is an MRI tech and an X-ray tech. He's like, oh yeah, I have state health physicists come in all the time and they do checks on our X-ray machines.
Really, health physics boils down to understanding how radiation interacts with biological systems like us humans and animals and plant life. From there, you can set radiation dose limits to keep radiation exposure at a safe level.
Radiation protection, in a quick sense, is really just making sure that people do not exceed doses that are harmful to them. The idea is trying to find a balance between the beneficial use of radiation, nuclear power, in medical uses as well. So it's a lot of limiting and monitoring radiation exposure to ensure that we're still in this realm of beneficial use of radiation technology.
When we're talking about radiation protection, we're really talking about protection from ionizing radiation, as opposed to non-ionizing radiation. Non-ionizing radiation, radiation like microwaves and radio waves, doesn't have enough energy to cause damage. Ionizing radiation, on the other hand, is radiation that has enough energy to cause damage. Think X-rays, for example, or on the very low energy end of ionizing radiation, ultraviolet light. Oregonians like myself get a crash course in radiation damage every winter when they leave the fog and rain and head to the sunshine of Hawaii, forget the SPF 45, and promptly burn themselves in nature's oven. In addition to feeling like you took a blowtorch to your skin, the overexposure to UV light is causing tissue damage. This is because it's actually causing damage by messing with the electrons in the atoms, which make up the molecules, which make up the cells, which make up you. Now, as I said, ultraviolet radiation is on the very low end of ionizing radiation, but it's ionizing radiation like X-rays or radioactive waste with a lot more energy that damages at a whole new level.
So the general term is ionizing radiation, which means that it ionizes atoms or strip electrons. So when you have DNA in your body. It bonds with other nucleotides through the interaction of electrons. So when you are stripping those electrons, it'll break DNA strands, which can reorganize themselves. That's a big issue because DNA tells your cells how to work, what to do. So if you're getting dosed way too high exceedingly, you can potentially lead down the road to the proliferation of cancer or other issues.
In other words, ionizing radiation destroys the electron bond, or the glue that holds atoms together, by stripping the electrons from the atoms. From a radiation protection and safety side, the trick is to limit the radiation dose from sources that can be controlled. Some radiation dose can't be controlled because we're all exposed to natural dose of ionizing radiation in our everyday lives. In the US, we measure radiation exposure in rem, and on average, the annual dose per person is 620 millirem, or 0.6 rem. That's according to the National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements. Of that 0.6 rem, 50% is from natural sources, like the radioactive gases radon and thoron, and cosmic radiation from space. The other 50% comes primarily from medical sources, things like CT scans and nuclear medicine procedures, and to a much lower extent, industrial or occupational dose. It's these non-natural sources of ionizing radiation that are regulated and limited by agencies like the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or the NRC. The NRC sets the annual dose limit for radiation workers to 5 rem total. To help keep track of this worker dose, the NRC uses a variety of computer codes to estimate and calculate the dose. One of these codes is called VARSCIN. First developed in 1987, there have been iterations over time as computers have advanced, and around 2007, Oregon State's Radiation Dosimetry Group, headed by David Hamby, took over the development and maintenance of the VARSCIN code. Logan's part of this group working on VARSCIN. VARSCIN is used to calculate dose from exposure to radioactive particles or other contamination on or near the skin. This exposure could happen in a variety of scenarios.
So anyone that's working, say, in the field or in a lab where you have a particulate version of radioactive material could potentially get a flake of this material on their skin. It's more common, say, in the nuclear industry where people are working with water lines, pressurized water lines, lines that come off of the primary system, and there is a potential for corrosion products and maybe some rust flakes or such that could be in the water. I mean, think about if you're changing out a hot water heater and some of the crud that can be at the bottom of that. It's a little bit different in a nuclear power facility, but it's the same general kind of concept. You have some solids in there, really small amounts, and that radioactive particle could potentially get on your clothing and on your gloves, and depending on how you doff your work clothes, potentially could move onto your skin.
Once the exposure happens, it's necessary to quickly calculate the dose.
So the cool thing about VARSCIN is it's pretty easy to use. It's kind of a quick calculator that you don't really need to know a ton of programming to know how to do, which a lot of other tools do use a lot of programming. So if some company wants to use this, they can easily train their people how to use it.
VARSCIN contains a library of hundreds of sources of radiation, and through a series of drop-down menus, you can select a variety of information about the source, its size and shape, how large the affected area of the skin is, and other relevant information. It then spits out a dose estimate.
Let's say, for instance, I have a spill of cobalt-60 on the back of my hand. Well, it's approximately in this area, 10 square centimeters. I'll enter this data into VARSCIN. You just pick cobalt-60, you'll put it on a spill of 10 square centimeters, and you say, well, it was on there for a minute. And you could put the data in, and it'll calculate an approximate dose. And that's very quick to send to the NRC, and they can do their calculations as well and say, hey, okay, thank you for letting us know about this.
Reporting and verifying these dose estimates helps keep workers safe, as well as keeping companies in compliance with federal law. To ensure accuracy, VARSCIN's calculations need to be compared to other dose tools and literature. It's here that Logan's peer-reviewed paper comes into the picture. Just as consumer software evolves and is updated, so too is VARSCIN. And as it was updated, it became necessary to compare VARSCIN to other tools and literature to make sure it was calculating dose at a comparably accurate level. Now, Logan had seen some papers comparing Varskin to these other tools, and he emailed Professor Hamby.
Basically, it started with, hey, we have these papers that came out, and it's comparing other data from MCNP, other tools to Varskin, and Varskin is falling short in these categories.
The categories, as might be expected for work that eventually became a peer-reviewed scientific paper, were pretty technical. But basically, it looked like they needed to examine more closely whether Varskin was accurately calculating dose when a source was interacting with the electrons in the atoms of the skin.
And Dr. Hamby, really what he wanted me to do is just run all these comparisons, start looking at data, just run as many comparisons as I can, make these charts, pull out all this data, and say, just try to visualize it, say, what's going on here? And at that point, we sat down and said, okay, this is where Varskin's falling short in these scenarios. Why is that? And we sat out to figure that out.
In this case, figuring out if Varskin was calculating dose at a comparably accurate level meant hours and hours with a laptop. Logan pored over paper after paper, importing graphs and charts and tables from other research, and computer codes into Excel to build a scenario library, so to speak. He then took this data from the comparison papers and tools and ran these scenarios in Varskin to see how it was holding up.
So what we found actually is that Varskin does compare pretty well to a lot of the data that exists currently.
Logan worked on this comparison from the summer after his sophomore year through his junior year, at which point Professor Hamby felt it was ready for the limelight.
I mean, at that point, he said this could become a paper, I think, if you compare it, especially the NRC. They would love to see something like this because it's their tool.
Logan took lead authorship with Professor Hamby co-authoring the paper. They submitted it to the Journal of Radiation Protection Dosimetry from Oxford University in the fall of 2017, and it was published in January 2018. I've put the link to the paper on our website at engineeringoutloud.oregonstate.edu. Logan's now finishing up his senior year at Oregon State and is weighing his future options.
Talking to Dr. Hamby about it as well, I still want to get my master's done, Master's of Science, and I'm hoping to continue with Varskin in that regard.
Whether further academic pursuits related to Varskin happen or not, Logan, before even graduating with his bachelor's degree, has already made his mark. His published research is informing the highest levels of regulating agencies in the nuclear and health physics fields. So for now, we'll let Logan end it with some advice to his fellow students.
For undergraduate students, I really encourage you to reach out to your professors and say, hey, I'm just willing to help. So if you are able to reach out to your professors and start early on even something that you might find a little mundane, it could become an internship in the future. It could become a job.
Could become a peer-reviewed
paper. It could become a peer-reviewed paper.
That's cool. What brought you to Oregon State initially?
So I'm from Portland.
This episode was produced and hosted by me, Jens Odegaard. Audio editing was by the awesome Brian Blythe. He makes music under the name Mortal Thing and just released his first album, On Nature. You should check it out on Spotify or anywhere else you buy or stream your music. Our intro music for the podcast is Ether Bunny by Eyes Closed Audio. You can find them on SoundCloud, and we use their song with permission of a Creative Commons Attribution license. Other music and sound effects in this episode were also used with appropriate licenses, and you can find those links on our website. For more episodes, visit our website, engineeringoutloud.oregonstate.edu. Also, please subscribe by searching Engineering Out Loud on your favorite podcast app. See you on the flip side. Things like CT scans, and nuclear medicine procedures. CT scans, putting the C back in scans, CT scans,